Good morning. I'm going to be recording the meeting or the session, and it will be available on our YouTube channel for viewing in the next day or so. I'll put the link in the chat for you shortly. Please keep your microphone on mute throughout the presentation. There will probably be some time for discussion at the end. The handouts were emailed to you to the email address that you used to register for the session. So you should all have them. If you do not, please let me know in the chat and I will send them out to you. As I mentioned, your presenters this morning are Jean Ashcroft and Dianne Romphf. Shelley Klochko is going to assist as well on the technology side for us and manage the chat this morning. All three of these ladies are very experienced researchers and genealogists, and all of them are members of the College of Certified Saskatchewan Genealogists and SGS members. I'm going to leave it at that for this morning and just say that you're in good hands this morning, and Jean is going to start you off, so I'll turn it over to you, Jean.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you find this session helpful. Just in way of review for those of you who weren't able to attend the first sessions, in the first two sessions, we talked about Saskatchewan sources that would be useful for your genealogy, including homestead files, census records. We spent some time looking at the Library and Archives Canada website. And of course, we went through the 5 W's, the who, when, where, what, and why that are helpful in creating your family tree and looking for resources. The first 3 or 4 slides I'm going to talk about is a little bit basic for some of you probably, but I'm going to assume that there's a few people that are just starting out. And once you've found these Saskatchewan records, you need to think about what you're going to do with them and starting your family tree. Certainly, you can start your family tree using paper. It's certainly the way most of us that have been doing it for a while started. Some of us are still doing it by paper, so it's certainly a great way to do it. For those of you who aren't comfortable with computers, perhaps, or aren't interested in doing it that way, the forms are available certainly online. You can certainly ask someone to Google or search for genealogy forms. There's really only 2 forms that you really need. One is the pedigree chart and one is the family group sheet. These are 2 examples that I've just pulled off the website. So there's any version, there's lots of different versions out there. So this one is pedigree chart. So this shows your direct ancestors. So it starts with you, always start with yourself. Then it shows your parents, your grandparents, and your great-grandparents. And there's, depending on the version that you get, there's room to show birth dates, death dates, marriage dates, just to give you sort of an outline of your direct ancestors. The other form that's necessary is a family group sheet, which you would use to record every member of the family that's involved. So you should have a family group sheet for yourself and your own family, one for your parents that shows all your siblings. And for those siblings who've got families, you would create a new family group sheet for them as well. And the same goes all the way through for your grandparents and all your cousins, your aunts and uncles and your cousins. You should have a group sheet for each one of those. And you may say, well, I'm not really interested in my cousins in particular, but you need to record what you know about them, because they may come in handy later on as you're doing your research. If you're using paper, you need to print the names. Cursive is too distortive. My husband's stepfather's last name is Chopchewik, and I was new to the family, could never remember whether it was IUK or UIK. So in cursive, it wasn't a problem. I could just put those 3 little lines up there between the T and the K and put a dot up in the middle someplace, and it worked for him. But if you're wanting to search people of that family, you need to be clear about what the family has used as the name. Perhaps then you also show that there's an option that sometimes it is spelt the other way, but printing is the way to make it clear. Female folks in your tree need to be entered with the birth name, not a married name. Now I know that's not always easy to find. I certainly have had lots of women come into my family with a married name, and I don't know that it's a married name on a marriage certificate. Later, I found out that it wasn't her birth name, and I've had to change it. I also have, where I haven't found marriage certificates, I've had to enter lots of women on my tree with no last name because I haven't been able to find out what that is yet. Don't enter a married name if you know that it's a married name. Dates need to be entered day, month, and year. And when you look at this done with numerals only, is this the 1st of May? Is it the 5th of January? Is it 1919? Is it 2019? So spell the month and always use 4 digits for the year. You may think you'll remember that you found it in 1965 by putting 65 in there, but you don't know that that's when you actually go back to look at your documents. So make it clear for yourself. If you're comfortable with computers, certainly a computer program is of value for entering your trees. I've listed a few different programs. Certainly there are others. They're all kind of similar. They have slightly different features. They have slightly different reports. People choose them for different reasons. Maybe their friend has one or their relative has a certain one. So I might as well have the same program. I'm not going to go into the pluses and minuses of them. Talk to someone who's used one. Borrow a magazine from SGS that has the updated review of the different programs and see what likely is something that would work for you. Some of them allow you to sync your tree with one that you've got on Ancestry or MyHeritage, which can be of value to some folks. You can also, lots of them have the ability through Wi-Fi to give you hints from those websites as well, if you're a member of the website, of course. Some of them are strictly standalone. Most of them have what I think to be a great value is a mobile app that you can put on your smartphone that allows you to download your tree into and keep it with you when you go places so that you don't have to always have your computer with you. It allows you to check birth dates if you're at a family gathering or find out how old Grandma Bamford was when she died. It allows you to quickly check that because sometimes we don't have all those dates in our heads like our families think we do. You enter your data really similarly to what you do on paper. So females with birth last names, the dates clearly spelled out, and so on. Again, starting with yourself and working back gradually. The thing about computers, though, is you need to back up your computer program. And whether you've been using your program for a long time or whether you're just thinking about getting one, you need to back up your computer program regularly. And ideally to 3 different spots, okay? So maybe one of them to a flash drive that's on your counter. Maybe one to someone else's computer or to a dedicated backup system that you have. And a third one really should be off-site. Computers crash, houses burn, water floods, you need to have a backup so that you don't have to start right from the scratch. The other place you can keep track of your tree is online. My Ancestry, MyHeritage, Find My Past, although they're pay sites, are certainly encouraging you to put your tree up there. And it seems to me that as I look around, there's lots of people who that's where they keep their tree is on one of those websites. The bonus of having them there is that those programs provide you hints on all the people that you've entered into your tree. So saves you from doing some research. As they add documents to their databases, they throw hints your way to see. You don't have to accept the hints, but they're there if you want to use them. But check the guidelines around what happens if you're unable to pay or whatever. Do you still have access to your tree? You probably won't get the hints, but maybe you have access to the tree and you can still use it there. So check those kinds of things. FamilySearch.org also encourage you to put a tree up in their website. It's free, which is a bonus. But some folks have had trouble with others making changes to their tree. So some people haven't had that trouble, but keep that in mind. You can see who made the changes to your tree, but it's a problem in having to go back and do something about that. So look into that as well. So now you've got your tree started and you've got partway through or you've gotten a long way through. Make sure as you go that you source all the information that you put into your tree. And that was certainly part of the first two sessions. You'll see I've included one of the sources that the other folks use, the one for the census record from Library and Archives Canada. Again, I'm not going to list the different ways you can source, but you should be able to, as you can with this, go to any database that has the census records or whatever record that you've got, and you should be able to find it based on the information that you've put in there. So if you've sourced something from newspapers.com and you've listed the newspaper, the location, the date, the column, the page, all that information, you should be able to, if someone else puts up that newspaper on a free site, you should be able to go into that free site and still look up that piece of information. Or you have a copy of it in your file. Each piece of information should really have 2 or 3 sources. Some sources are more accurate than others. If for sources that have been entered by the person who participated in the event, it tends to be more accurate than the death certificate, who was filled out by maybe a neighbor or a young grandson or a widow who was devastated by the death of her husband. She's not really going to care that much about his parents. If she's not really thinking clearly yet as she's having to fill out this form. So assess your sources and see how accurate they might be based on who supplied the information. I know in going through some newspapers, I found birth announcements for 2 of my siblings. And when I looked at them, I went, gee, I didn't think that was the dates that they had their birthdays. So I looked at my program, and sure enough, they weren't the same as what I had in my system. And when I looked, I saw that I had entered the information from a birthday book that I had, of course. Is that accurate? Oh, I think it was, but so I actually had to phone them and say, is this your birthday? And so now I know that information is more accurate than the other siblings I have that I've still just taken from the birthday book. Online sources allow you to often save a copy in their website in a little shoebox or whatever they call it, that's yours to look at. But I would suggest you need to print or save to your own computer copies of those documents. Then you can go back and review them. Okay. Don't source documents or information with just Ancestry or Find My Past or FamilySearch.org. Give the original information of where that is. You can certainly add the fact that you found it on Ancestry or Family Search, but you need to have that original documentation. Where did that information, where did that piece of information on Ancestry come from originally? Something that all of us need to do, no matter how long you've been doing your research, is I think you need to periodically review what you've done. And I think you need to start right from the beginning periodically, not as often as just sort of reviewing a branch that you haven't been working on for a while. But periodically, I think we all need to go back to the start and see what information we have for each of those people right from the start. You may find you've made mistakes in entering or copying information from your sources. You maybe have misinterpreted information. I have a Stewart family from Prince Edward Island, and I'd received a copy of my great-grandfather's baptism from a source in PEI, as well as a copy of his parents' wedding announcement from a newspaper on PEI, and saw that the marriage was in Tillsonburg. I was really excited to have this information. I checked a map of PEI and I couldn't find Tillsonburg, but the wedding was in 1868. So, little places disappear in time. And so I just sort of chalked it up to, But in getting ready for a trip out there, I got reviewing the family information that I had, and I got looking at this marriage announcement again and saw that it actually said Tillsonburg, CW, Canada West. Ontario, who would have thought? I just didn't even pay attention to the CW. Sure enough, there's a Tillsonburg in Ontario, and this great-great-grandmother's sister lived there with her physician, doctor, wife, or husband, and they had been the hosts of the wedding. So I was able to go into Ontario records and find her marriage and get the girls' parents, which I didn't have either. So it doesn't hurt to go back and check what you have. Most of us have received chunks of information from family people or aunts that were doing genealogy forever, and we've quickly added the information to the tree and gone on. Time to check it. Again, with this same Stewart family, when I got to go on this trip to PEI, I met up with a local historian, and he had a database which I think must have included every single original family in PEI. He found my Stewart family and gave me a whole bunch of information. I was excited. I came back and I went through a couple of books that SGS has on Prince Edward Island and sort of confirmed what he had given me, which made sense. The other day, as I was going through my computer program, it alerts me gives me a little alert when a child is born before a marriage or 20 years after a marriage has taken place, as though you can't have children born in those areas, and you can get rid of those little alerts. I came to this great-grandmother and looked at her, and her information looked okay with her children and her husband. But she was born in 1809, and when I went to look at her parents, I could see that they were born in 1817 and 1850, and there's no way that I can make that work. So I have to start looking anew for that family. You might have missed something on the census records. Religion is one that sometimes we don't pay attention to as we're first finding the family. We get the family and the ages of the children, the fact that they're farmers, sometimes when they were married, how long they've been married, that kind of information. But we don't look at the religion. Maybe there were 2 different religions in that family. And so where you've been looking for birth baptisms is the wrong church. Relationships. I have a census record where I had my ancestor and found the census record where he was with his parents, and there was an older brother. I went, man, I didn't realize there was an older brother. He had obviously been born before the parents were married, but that happens in all families. So I got the next census, and lo and behold, if this older brother wasn't identified as a stepson, and a different name was used in that census. If I'd only gone with the one census, I would never have discovered that. I would have gone looking for this older brother and would not have been able to find information on him. So go back and look at some of those records that you have, and just make sure that it makes sense for what you've got. Redoing reminds you of what you still need for individuals, what you haven't had. It reminds you that new records have become available that weren't there when you were last working on an individual. Lots of vital stats release information year by year, other than Saskatchewan maybe. But you need to go back and have a look for the information. I had to do a whole whack of work around the 1926 census when it got released, because lots of my folks were in Western Canada at that point in time. Make sure you're checking each person, create a list of what's missing. Use the spreadsheets that Shelley talked about in the last session. They're very valuable in helping you see the picture more clearly at once, at a glance. And then create a research plan using the 5 Ws. Maps and gazetteers as well, although it's hard to find them when you're not able to use the libraries so much. But use for gazetteers, use Wikipedia when you're at home. Find out about the site that gets mentioned, or the location that your folks had their census taken in. Maps are vitally important, I believe, to doing research the further back you get as well. Maps of the time period your ancestor resided. If I had a PEI map in 1865, 1870, I might not have made that assumption that Tillsonburg was a place that had been deserted. Note the date. So note the date on the maps. Make sure that it makes sense with what you're looking for. We like maps for borders. Those of you who search Eastern European families, borders are important for you. But even for those of us who are still doing work in Canada, the United States, Britain, borders are important as well. Borders at time periods are important, because even now municipalities are changing, townships, counties, all those things have changed over time. And so where the data, the information, the vital stats, that kind of information was sent and is being housed, maybe depends on where they were living at the time, and what those borders look like. Topographical maps provide information on the land mass around where your folks lived. So the fact that they were going to a town further away than one that was actually closer to them, maybe was because there was a river or a deep gorge or valley in between, and it made more sense to go to the easier to get to town rather than the closer one. The Cummins maps, valuable. I used them to find neighbors of my family that I couldn't find in the 1901 census. I was sure that they would be there. So I looked up some neighbors on the Cummins maps and was able to find them, scrolled through a smaller section of the 1901 census and found them, and they'd been indexed. Fire insurance maps and city maps give you information on city people, town people, the kinds of buildings they had, the streets, and so on. Genealogy.com, Dave Obie's website, gives you great information on maps. It's worth buying maps if you've got a large group of people in a particular area. And Family Search has great maps. They've got the Cummins maps and so on there. So have a look. It's a little more challenging to search them out and get the right ones, but it's worth looking at, particularly these days when we can't get into SGS. Oh dear, what have I done here? Oh dear. Oh dear.
Just press your escape key, Jean.
Yeah, let's.
And you're still sharing your presentation, so if it opens up your other screen, don't worry about it. Oh no, it does show it. Oh, your presentation now.
No, that's not what I want. I want this one. I'll just have to scroll through just a sec here. Maps. Okay. Slideshow and resume. Okay, sorry about that.
Looks good.
Okay, so resources online. Again, try to make use of the free sites. I mean, Ancestry, Find My Past, My Heritage are all great, but they cost a lot of money. So Genealogy, he has a wealth of information, particularly on Canadian sources, but he also has maps and some of those resources that you might find useful. Cindy's List, don't forget about Cindy's List. She has information on anything you can imagine. FamilySearch.org's wiki is a great tool to make use of. And lots of the archives, libraries, and museums have added lots of stuff to their sites that's free and usable since COVID has come in. So there's lots of free places where you can get information. Ensure when you are using the databases that you're using them effectively. Even for the small databases, make sure you go in and read the help portion. It's usually up on the top corner of the website when you go in. Click in, see. They usually tell you what they've got, how they've done it, that kind of thing. So it's a value. It lets you know whether this is a resource that has something that might contain your family. Also, for the bigger sites, make use of the catalog area of the website to zone in on a specific area that you're wanting to research. If you go to a place like Ancestry or even FamilySearch.org, they've got thousands and thousands of pieces of data. And so when you do a search for your Robert Bamford in the search column in Ancestry, you get 1,000 options. Most of us don't have the patience, I suspect, to go through all those 1,000 responses because lots of them don't even have him listed in particular. But does that 950th have information that you would find helpful? Maybe. So instead, go into the catalog and look for the type of information or the location that you're specifically looking at, and see what they have in their list of data. When you look at My Heritage in their catalog under Ontario, they indicate they've got 24 different collections. And within those collections, you can search by 3 different time periods. So you can narrow down the database that you're searching by quite a bit, and you don't have to be as specific about the information that you include in it. Okay, so you can maybe search by a year or only by a last name, because everybody in that particular parish who has that last name may be somebody that you want to have a look at, not just your own ancestor. Don't forget social media. Facebook is actually particularly wonderful for genealogy. There are lots and lots of groups, all sorts of different computer programs, different locations. We've got Saskatchewan, I belong to one for the Ottawa Valley. There's special interest groups like DNA, genetic research, one for using Ancestry or Find My Past, or just almost anything. You can actually create your own Facebook page and only have your cousins, your immediate family, part of that page. And so, if you've discovered a new family group, why not create a Facebook page and include them, and it's easy enough to provide information to each other separate from the general Facebook people that you're in touch with. Don't forget Twitter and Instagram. Certainly the magazines and larger groups belong to Twitter and Instagram, and can provide information for you. Pinterest even, how to do reunions, different kinds of charts, that kind of thing. And the other one that's of value, of course, that we're putting this up on is YouTube. You can get all sorts of trainings and how-to and beginner help and strategies that people have put up on YouTube. So for resources, it's great. Try just Googling your name, as it were, your ancestor's name, the locations of families, all a resource. Find out the newspapers and the community history books that belong to your family. Use a variety of search engines. I know that when I use Firefox, and so when I go into Firefox, I just fill in the blank of what it is I'm searching. But if you actually go to the down arrow or the little magnifying glass that's on the corner of the query site, you can actually identify and go into a different search engine, which looks for data slightly differently than the one you're currently using. FamilySearch.org documents, they've got lots of documents that aren't indexed, but they are still searchable. You can go into Family Search and look at Saskatchewan homestead records. You need to have done your query on what the file number is and so on, but you can actually, it's a little bit more cumbersome, takes a little bit longer. I found a Manitoba, they'd done some copying of the Manitoba wills, and before they were indexed, they're indexed now, but before they were indexed, I got looking through and found one for my great grandmother, who identified a half sibling of my grandfather, who I knew had been left in England, but who I didn't know anything more other than it was Polly, and she was probably born the year before he was. And she listed him and gave her current address. So I knew what her married name was and where she lived. So I was able to make a contact. But I did that through just sort of paging through some wills that hadn't been indexed yet. And of course, make use of your pay programs, the Ancestry and those kinds of things from libraries and so on that that allow you to use them, at least a version of it, for free before you decide that you need to take the plunge and use them yourself and pay for the monthly or yearly pay. So that's my section, and I'm now going to pass it over to Dianne, and she's going to talk to you about a few more of the topics that we thought would be valuable to you as you go on with your research.
Thanks, Jean. And I'll do my best. I just have to find my, there it is. Okay. Now, I have to share this. Is anyone seeing my screen? No,
Not yet.
not yet.
Down at the bottom, you've got to share a screen there.
Yeah, I know. Let me just go back here. Hang on. Of course I screwed up again.
We're taking our turns.
I know. I need to, I can't get my, I gotta stop this for a minute. Okay, now maybe I can do it. Oh my God. I'm having trouble getting back to the screen, the Zoom screen, to see you guys.
Can you use Alt Tab to find it?
Oh, you're right. That's what my husband said, the whiz guy. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, Shelley, what would we do without you? Like, Shelley, I can see you. There we go. Okay. We'll get there, kids.
Going.
Are we going? Can you see
Yeah.
me? Can you see my screen?
We do, but can you put it on the slideshow? On the bottom beside your percentage? Oh, there
Yeah.
we go. Perfect.
Are we
Yeah.
seeing it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry guys. I'm not good at this. Okay. So thank you, Jean. I loved all those reminders because God, we've been doing it for a long time. That makes me think. So what I'm going to talk about is newspapers, what a valuable resource it is, where can we look for them? Wills, we'll talk about those a little bit and what the importance might be in your research and possible places to look for a will. Genealogy groups, well, we're in a genealogy group right now. There are many groups. I'll talk a little bit about that. And I will wind up talking a little about DNA. And I know for the Regina branch, we had Marianne talk to us on, I think it was Tuesday. She's a whiz at DNA, I'll tell you. So that's my new game. Anyway, let's talk about newspapers. Local newspapers are or communities, sometimes community papers help guide you to other sources if you want to learn about a community and then you see your person in your family mentioned. You can it often leads you to other sources. Men and women who were in the military are often mentioned or recognized in some way for being involved maybe in war or perhaps killed in battle. There's also things like notice to creditors in a paper. Now you post that when you're settling an estate. An executor or a lawyer will post that if they're not sure if the person has outstanding debts. So if you see something like that for one of your family, you're probably going on to look for an obit or some other death information, burial information. Changes of name are sometimes, or used to be, more than today, I think, in the paper. You may even find it. Or like for someone you know, I mean. Another thing is unclaimed mail. I actually used this with one of my family for an area where I was researching in South Dakota. And they posted in the newspaper when the postmistress or master had unclaimed mail. Well, that gives you a pretty good clue that your person might have left the community. You could be looking for obits for that person or some other movement. There's all kinds of things you can find in the paper. I'd caution that there may be errors. The information is only as good as the person giving it and their knowledge. And then also there can be typing errors, as you know, for anything. In your handout, I found a couple of instances in my own family research that gave me sort of a laugh, but not really in some cases. But they're from older newspapers, which I found to be much more detailed than what we see today. Now, I don't know how good your copy is. It might be terrible, but I'll give you an idea. I'm not going to read the whole first article to you, but it's from Grand Rapids, Minnesota in December 1925. And the title of it is, "What Killed Mrs. Bosley?" And this article describes the body of a woman who is one of my family members. Her body was found to be frozen in an ice river near her farm home. Her husband claimed he knew nothing about how she died, but it states that he seemed to express little regret that she was dead. It goes on to say the police raided the farm following reports of illicit trade in moonshine. And police found a still operated by another fellow who happened to be living there. And he seemed to be involved with that still. So Mr. Bosley was notified to appear in court in a few days, and they arrested the other folks that were there. And the deputy went to the farm to arrest him because he did not show up to testify in the case. And he found the man very much under the influence of liquor. When he began searching around, he saw the woman's body frozen in the ice in the river. And of course, the coroner was summoned. So this is all in this article. And the inquest was held. The body was found to have no water in the lungs. So there was evidence of suffocation before the body went in the water. After deliberation, the coroner's jury determined that the deceased came to her death by suffocation at the hands of some person or persons unknown to the jury. When the husband was questioned on the witness stand, he said he'd been drinking all afternoon and evening. He had a bottle that had not been found by the police searching the property previously. He said his wife had one drink and went outside, and he went to bed and woke up the next morning and drank more the next day and kept drinking until the police came to find him the next day. He supposed his wife had gone to the neighbors, and when he was informed of her death, he said she must have attempted to cross the river to the home of the neighbor and fell in. She had only her underclothes, a thin dress, no shoes or stockings, hat, and her hair was unbound. And all of that's in the article. That one blew me away when I got it. I got that article from a cousin, a long lost cousin who has helped me a lot with research. He and I were both looking for this lady. The lady that was killed in this case is related to both of our great parents. And we were blown away, to say the least. And as a matter of interest, the guy never went to jail for it. But anyway, and I have another one. These are both in your handouts if they're difficult here to read, and they will be probably. This one's a little bit better. This one I'll read because it's small or not that long. But just think about today, how we live, and see if you think this is interesting. But this was in Brooks, Grant County, South Dakota, February 27th, 1891. To whom this may concern. Be it remembered that on the day and date above written, I, Dora Menard, having heard that H.T. Menard, who I can tell you was her husband, has been circulating false and scandalous stories about one Joseph Pryor, who is her father, and also said that Menard in his possession a paper or document which purports to be very grave charge against the honor and morality of the said Joseph Pryor and myself, which statement and document is false without even a color of truth. Furthermore, that said Menard is circulating the story that I, Dora Menard, did sign this scandalous document. And anyway, she's swearing that this happened, right? In the newspaper, think about today. I don't think something like that would be seen today. But when you find the old ones, they have good stories in them. Well, it's good and not good, I guess, but they're interesting to find. And that's also one of my family members, I must say. Anyway, so where are we going to look for these newspapers? They're commonly found in archives and libraries. Certainly my experience has been a lot in Saskatchewan archives, newspapers, also public library. Microfilm is what you'll find there, although a lot of this stuff is getting online now. Oh God, I've got a message. Are you guys hearing me okay?
It was
I
just
got a
breaking up there for a little while.
Yeah, it was
You
looking
sound better
like,
now.
it said it was unstable for a minute here. So
Okay.
remember I told you guys my husband's doing a Zoom as well. Anyway, there's a wonderful book that was printed back in 1984. And I've used it repeatedly. I got it from the archives. I think they use it as a kind of a index or directory. I don't know how many of you can see me, but I have the book here. This is what it looks like. And I give you the name of it in your handout. But it lists towns and communities in Saskatchewan where newspapers existed in the past. And it's well organized by community alphabetically and all that. But it tells you whether they have a copy. And I found that very important when I would go to the archives to look for newspapers. I found this book invaluable. Probably that's all online now, but I haven't looked online. But anyway, if you find books like that in any archives or library, you're going to find that it's helpful. A lot of stuff, as I said, was on microfilm. It's now, a lot of it's being moved over to digital, that making it accessible by the internet and your computer. I know the public library, at least they used to, haven't been there for a while, but they had all the leader posts. And now if you have some of the pay sites, you can get leader posts. There's various ways to get them. I understand the archives is digitizing their newspaper collection. Sounds like a huge project. And of course, we can't use the archives right now, but at some point, things are moving to digital. So you'll probably have to check if you do want to go to the archives anytime about access just because of COVID restrictions. So I think I included in your handout their phone number and things like that. Pay-per-view subscriptions are becoming the way of the world, it would seem. They use optical character recognition, or OCR, you'd refer to it as. That allows you to search by your family name or another term like a community name or things like that. There's a few websites in your handout. You can look over. Certainly money is involved. So one that I use and subscribe to is newspapers.com. And a very good friend of mine named Jean Ashcroft subscribes to Newspaper Archive. Really good plan is to have a good friend that subscribes to one and you subscribe to the other. And then you can share, helping each other to look up whatever article or whatever person you might be looking for information on. Jean touched on Facebook being helpful for some of their groups, and I've recently joined a couple on Facebook that I found amazing because they had obituary lookups and marriage lookups. And I don't think I could be forceful enough to ask someone to do all my research for me, but I sure would use that if there's somebody I couldn't find. There may be someone who lives locally that might help you, or you just never know. But Facebook doesn't hurt. And I mentioned using an index earlier as well. I want to mention the ones, there's a series of books that SGS has there, and I bought them one time from SGS, and maybe some of you other people own them. But they were a group of volunteers who created these indexes years ago in the Leader Post, from Leader Post entries, I mean, for births, deaths, and marriages for certain years. And they cover the period from 1883 to 1916. So let's face it, those are the most common things we're looking for in a paper. And if those can help you, they give you a brief explanation of what the thing says, the article, and then it points you to the article if you want to actually find the actual article and print it off or keep it or anything like that. I can't even imagine how many times I've used those books. Like, they are just, that's why I use them constantly. I've also done a lot, oh, you know what? Oh no, we're okay. I've done a lot of research in Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota for my family. And the United States Newspaper Project has cataloged and microfilmed a bunch of historic newspapers in the US. They cataloged and microfilmed website. It's called Chronicling. I've been having a lot of fun with that one because I do a lot of US search. You may or may not find it helpful, but I have a little trouble because you search, you might put in a name and look for a search in the search committee or whatever, but my maiden name is Meyer, and it's PR is used in a newspaper. So the word searching doesn't help as much for me as community searching, but hey, it's still helpful. It's all helpful.
Diane, you're breaking up a bit. Is there anything that you can do from your end?
The University of Alberta. I don't think so. Because I
Have you
think
still
the
got more than,
internet doing that.
yeah, is it more than one person still on the line?
Yes,
Yeah, that might be
and
the
he's
problem.
on the same thing.
Yeah.
I'll do my best. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. I haven't got too much more. So wills. I'm going on to talk about wills. Locating a will is another source for tracking folks who have moved or separated for some reason from their family. In family research, I had, in my own family, I mean, I've had a family person who was a brother of my great-grandfather. And I didn't know what happened to him. I found his wife had died. I found her grave. I found pictures, all of that. He had homesteaded in South Dakota. And then it seemed like following her death, there was seemingly no trace of this man. And this cousin, I have a cousin who I've met through family searching, but I've never actually met him. But he lives in Minneapolis. So he's looking for the same guy, but he was looking for him before I was. And he hired a researcher in Canada who had told him that the guy moved to Alberta. And I discounted this, kind of like Jean's story. I said, that can't be the guy. It's spelled differently. Well, guess what? It turns out when he told me that story, I looked in Alberta. And guess what? I found this guy. And he had come to Canada. And yes, he spells his name different than his brother. But he was in Canada, in Alberta, in Daysland, Alberta. And he applied for a homestead there. And he went there in 1903 and he died in 1908. Now he was 65, I believe. Well, they didn't even know because I found his death certificate from Alberta. And it says they don't really even know how old he is, but he appeared to be about 65, which I thought was kind of interesting. But the interesting part with regard to a will is that he didn't have a will, but he'd been granted homestead land. And when he'd been granted homestead land, something had to be done with the land. And so the government took control of his estate, sold his land, had to locate his family. This is the bingo part. They had to locate his family. All I did was order a copy of this will information from the government. They charged me only for copies. And I found out where this guy's family had gone. Now, one of them could not be located, and they ended up giving the rest of what was left to the one they could find. But nevertheless, I knew what happened. And it led me to other relatives. So, and by the way, it was Dora in our previous story. She had gone to Washington State, probably because she wasn't too happy living in North or South Dakota. But anyway, take a look in Family Search. They have digitized. If you're looking for a Saskatchewan will for 1887 to 1931, you'll be able to pull it up, sort it by name. Manitoba, they have the same thing. I've put that information in your handout for you to locate those. If you do find a will, of course, there's the normal places like someone might give you one. It was left at someone's house or it's in someone's papers or whatever. But if you find one, I consider it a find. And you're going to find some information in it that you like. Now, let's take a look at genealogy. Is everybody hearing me okay still? Yes? Okay. With genealogy groups, certainly SGS is one of those. There are many in Canada and all over the world. If you're struggling, especially with COVID, we can't go out anywhere. We're doing a lot of internet stuff. Look around to the groups that are around in an area that you're researching. You may find a local history or genealogical group. And they'll be very helpful. I know I've belonged to one in Scotland for a couple of years, one in Vermont for a couple of years, because I was researching in those areas. And it can be very helpful to share information, or they may have things like that aren't online yet that someone can look up for you. So recently, I'm sure most people are doing a little bit more searching online than they usually are. But it certainly can save you money and trouble of traveling there to investigate their websites. I included in the handout some of the genealogical societies in Canada. Just look at them, it gives you ideas. When I was in Vernon, my brother lives in Vernon, BC, and I was out there house sitting for him a few years ago. And I was bored. So I looked up their local genealogical society, and I went over to where they have their library. And there were several people there, and they were so happy to meet me and have me sit down, and they wanted to talk about SGS and what we had at our library, and they showed me what they had. And they asked me if I would trade my email with them. And if I needed something, they'd be happy to look it up. And likewise, I said, if you need, because at that time we didn't have as much stuff online. And I told them I'd go get them a photo of a headstone if they needed one, or I'd do what I could to help them. No, they've never come to me, and I've never gone to them because I'm not doing any research there. But I liked the idea that they were willing and wanted me to do a trade-off with them. So think about that for future. And DNA. I could never hope to talk about what Mary Lou did the other day, but I will tell you what has happened with me and my DNA searching. It's amazing, and you learn a lot of new things. But ethics are the most important thing that are going to come into play with DNA. I'm not any kind of expert on DNA, but I'll share with you what I have found, and I won't share all of them, but one is kind of important when it comes to ethics. Some of you will have heard this story before, so I'm just kind of simple it down. A few years ago, I was curious about my DNA and what it could do for me, so I got mine done. And I found that I had almost 800 cousin matches. And it looked a little daunting, to say the least. But after a while of it sitting there and me doing a little bit out of interest, but not really doing a whole lot of research, I got an email from a fellow, and he wanted to talk to me. He gave me his phone number, and he said, I'd really like to talk to you. He didn't want to email. So I phoned him. And he told me this story about him. You know, I'm looking at my notes, but I know this story off the top of my head. He was born in Calgary. He lived in Oregon. That's where I was phoning him. He was born in Calgary in 1945. His mom was a waitress at a restaurant there. And one of the fellows in Calgary who was with military struck up a relationship with her, and he was the result. And when she became pregnant, he wanted nothing to do with it. Said he had a wife and kids at home and couldn't have anything to do with it. And basically she never saw him again. So he knew nothing about his dad. He had taken on his stepfather's name. So when that's why I wanted to talk to him, because his name meant nothing to me in my DNA searches. Then I understood why it meant nothing to me. And I pretty quickly narrowed it down to my mother's family by looking at the shared matches. But that was really almost mystifying as well, because I narrowed it down to one family of cousins, and there's 5 boys involved. But I quickly found out who was in the military and who wasn't. 3 of 5 were in the military. 3 of 5 were in the war. One sister was still alive. I phoned her because I knew her and asked her about DNA. Well, first of all, I asked her if one of her brothers could possibly be this guy. And she said, probably. And I went to visit her because she told me she'd give me a DNA sample. So I did. And we had a lovely visit. She gave me the DNA sample. I sent it in. This fellow certainly matches to that family, but we still don't know to which brother. Because the oldest brother, I was certain it was him. But I found out he had a living daughter And she was most interested in this story, wanted to get to know the guy in Oregon. I referred her to him. They struck up this great conversation, and they've been friends ever since. Then she decides she wants to get her DNA done. So she does. Her DNA shows that she cannot be his full sibling, or she'd be a half sibling, sorry, but she can't be by the search. So it's probably one of the other two. So now I got the whole family talking about this, and I have talked to them. It took me a long time to phone them and talk to them about this because I really didn't want to hurt feelings or upset people. And I did, but it's many hours or many years after the fact here. And remember, years ago, people cared about things like this. Nowadays, it's not as big a deal. However, they're still talking about would any of them like to do a DNA test. They're not sure. How would you feel if you got a call that you might have a brother or sister somewhere? I thought about it a long time and decided I would want to know. So that's why I phoned one child in one family and one child in the other family, and had a long heart-to-heart with each of them. They're thinking about it. That's all I can say. But what I want to tell you folks is, remember that when you read those matches in there, that I have found with talking to the various people that I match with, lots of different reasons why they have DNA in there. Somebody gave it to me as a gift. They gave me a test. I don't really care. One of them got artificially inseminated and really was trying to find the father of her child. Many reasons is what I'm saying. They may not be interested in you delving into their DNA, even though you really want to know what's going on. So if you use it, I've used Ancestry a lot. I only use Ancestry, so I can't comment on the other ones, but I have color-coded all my matches. It has helped me immensely on both sides of my family to link me with people I didn't know existed. It is wonderful. And quite honestly, I don't have the time to search it all, but maybe I'll get more done. In the future, I probably will. There's a search tool in DNA Painter website, and I listed that in your handout. It's helpful to figure out what kind of relationship, and Mary Lou talked about this the other day. What kind of, where does this person match based on the number of centimorgans they have? Are they a first cousin? Are they a second cousin? What sort of relationship could they have? I would definitely use that, because I was ready to not use that until this problem happened with me. And there are many ways to search, or not really to search, but to learn more about DNA. Like Jean said, YouTube, Facebook, you name it. There are just websites all over the place. I'm just going to say read and understand what you're doing. I think it would help immensely. And my recommendation is to go slowly on DNA. Understand what you're looking at and don't go too fast just because you want to know. Especially remember that they're family. Very wise genealogy lady told me once, your desire to know does not equal your right to know. Keep that in your mind. That's a Laura Hanowski statement, I might say. Anyway, I want you to have fun with it. And I have a slide with websites that I mentioned, but those are in your handout. So I don't think I'm going to spend a lot of time in here because anything I've mentioned is in here. Okay. And I'm ready to go on with questions. And we have 3 questions submitted to us. So one of them is from Gene. I think Gene's on here. I think I saw his face on there. He has been searching. I just gave a bit of a summary here of what he was looking for. He's searching for his great-grandparents. His grandfather was born in Russia, 1884, immigrated to North Dakota, 1905, married his grandmother in 1908, immigrated to Saskatchewan, 1911, died 1925. Death certificate indicates parents Fred H. and Catherine S. and Schramm in brackets. DNA results from mother born 1923 lead to Philip H. 1825 to 1885 with 15 children. And I have a Fred 1857 who was married twice and neither Catherine S. or 6 children and do not match grandfather for his 2 known brothers. So basically he's stuck, is what he's saying. So Jean and I together put these hints together to give you. And I'll tell all of you folks that sent the questions in, we're happy to email these to you. So don't feel that you have to furiously write them down. Anyway, first of all, the major question we both had was, who gave that death certificate information? Who was the informant? Find out who that was. That might be very important to what you're looking for. North Dakota, 1910 census. Look at that if you haven't already. If he's a farmer, look at North Dakota land records. If he, or also marriage records at the North Dakota State Archives. Church records for a location, for the location where they lived in North Dakota. There may be something there that might help. Look for other family members in North Dakota in your searching. Make sure you're watching for other family members, not just him. People most often went where they either were related to someone or they were close to someone. Look for naturalization records. They were basic before 1906, but more family details after. If he was a farmer, look, I put that on twice, I'm sorry. But if he was a farmer, that's the webpage, GLOW Records. BLM is Bureau of Land Management in the US. You can find a homestead file if he got one there. Genealogy groups, we think would be very helpful to you. And a couple are given there. And websites. So websites to go to if you want to find out more information about that. And look for his immigration papers or immigration, like his passenger lists through Ellis Island for 1905 and see if you can find anything. So that's what we came up with for Jean. Do we ask Jean, Deanna? Do we talk about that now, or what do you think?
You can ask if he has any questions.
Do you have any questions, Jean?
No, I think I'm good. Most of the information you've given me, I've searched most of that already. I'm not getting a lot of results. Although I just want to comment here, and I mentioned it the other night, that my grandfather, who was in North Dakota and came to Saskatchewan, he had 2 brothers, one in North Dakota, one in Montana. I went back and checked their death certificates. They had exactly the same parents on their death certificates, but different to my grandfather. So I followed up on the information that was on their death certificates, and it took me right back to where I knew my grandfather was supposed to be. So where this Fred was listed from 1857, that's the exact family where my grandfather was supposed to be. And all the information was there. It's just opened it all up for me. And what you were saying earlier in regards to the wrong information on the death certificate, The informant was somebody local, but I totally understand why the information was wrong. My grandparents had just moved from Alberta to Saskatchewan. They moved to a new community south of Regina. Excuse me.
There you
They'd
go.
only been there 8 months when my grandfather died at 40. So my grandmother was in a new community with 7 or 8 little children with nothing.
There you go.
A week before Christmas, alone. She had probably never known her in-laws because she'd only been married to my grandfather for 17 years.
Yeah.
I don't think they ever came over from Europe. So
Mhm.
There
she
you go.
probably never met these people. So I
Yeah.
totally understand why it was the wrong information.
Good.
And not only that, my great-grandfather's youngest sister was married to a gentleman by the name of Schramm, and that just got all mixed into the whole picture. So it's
There you
all
go.
clear now
Yeah.
what happened. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
girls. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Good deal.
Okay. I will read. Jean, do you have any? You don't have anything to add to that, do you?
Nope,
Okay.
that worked good.
I think I already got your stuff in here. So, okay,
Yep.
I'll read the second one. It's a long thing, so we just picked out the important points. Oh, I guess I should see if I got it here. There we go. It's Joseph Patrick. It's for Gwen. Joseph Patrick Cunningham. He enlisted in 1914 in Edmonton. Date of birth is stated as 9th November 1891, born in Dublin, Ireland. His next of kin was ID'd as Mrs. Deachman, who was born in Ontario. He was discharged in 1919. He married Winifred Karen Merton in Kent, England in June 1917. He is found on several, several Regina Henderson directories, 1920 to 28, census 21 and 26, and he died 24th January 1929. So I really had to hold myself back from not really searching for this guy. I just want to give you clues. But anyway, both of us feel it would be really advantageous to search the Deachman family further. It may be a waste of time, but it may really find you some information. There's a good chance she could be a relative and not just a landlady as expected. 1901 and 1911 Irish censuses, definitely you could look there. Jean, did you find the death of, or was that in our write-up? I forget.
Yeah.
There's a death of a father of the same name in Ireland and baptism for Joseph Patrick. That might be just something to pursue.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Jean gave me the Irish Sources website. Have you used that, Jean?
I have not, but it's there. There aren't a lot of Irish sources that I'm aware of, and I happened on this one, and it seemed to have good reviews, but it does cost, so it's worth looking into.
Oh, it's a thought. Yeah. And I noticed that the attestation paper says that his given name is Josephus. It was quite clearly Josephus, and I just am wondering, is there any significance to that? So be broad in your search if you're searching by name. Any other source for birth date? What we wondered is if the only source you have for his birth date is his attestation paper, I wouldn't go too hard with that because many of the guys lied about their ages. But it is a guide. I would try to find a birth record if you can, or some other source to prove a birth date, maybe a baptismal, something like that. Montana census, we would look there, or I would look there. I think Jean would agree. Look for those three brothers if you think you know who they are. 1910 census, and this was me because I couldn't leave it totally alone. I did look at the 1910 census and I found those three guys, Thomas, John, and Patrick, living in Montana. His obituary, when I say his obituary, I mean Joseph Patrick, the guy you're looking for. His obit, I looked it up, and it says that Spears Funeral Home handled his burial. He's buried in Regina in the old cemetery. And she knows that already. Gwen, I know, knows that. But I looked up his obit, it said Spears handled it. Remember when we had Spears come and talk to us? Spears are very good about sharing information. They may be able to give you something like a birth date. You don't know, but it might be worth a check. On the SRI at SGS website, it shows them listed in a book called Good Neighbors, Memories of the Victoria Plains and Foxley Districts. On page 140 in that, there's something listed about him. That's all I know. One of his sons, I noted in looking at your other information, one of his sons, Norman, was born in Pilot Butte. I just thought there might be a link. However, I don't think, it doesn't readily say that SGS has a copy of this, but the Regina Public Library has this book. At least 2 of the children were born in Millet, Alberta. Is there any burials, news articles? Now, you may know all this already, Gwen, but us picking it up blind don't know that. And I did find a passenger list with Winifred and a child named Josephine that arrived in Quebec City the 19th of May, 1919 on a ship called the Scandinavian. I don't know if that's the right person. Maybe, might be worth a little search. And if so, who's Josephine and where did she go? Because there was one child, I believe, mentioned in the write-up from Gwen that says that the mom came over with a child. But then where is she? Because she's not on the censuses. So I would question those things if it was me. And Gina and I both think DNA might be your friend in this one. And I don't know if you've ever gone that way, but DNA might help. Anything else, Jean, that you can think of?
No, I still think that there must be a tie to the Deachman family. I mean, it's possible that Mr. Deachman was somebody that he worked with in Edmonton, but
yeah,
I'd go back further. It may be like a great aunt or something.
Yeah,
a generation back.
Yeah, it could be. Okay, is Gwen on here?
Yes, I am.
And how do any of those answers help you, or do they help you?
I do know that was my grandmother and the baby Josephine, and Josephine died at 1 or 2 years old in Millet. I've got all that.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
I
And
did not see that, so okay.
yeah, and the son Norman Richard, yes, that's my uncle. I have all that information. I know where he was, and he was in Ontario and he ended up dying.
So you may already be aware of that book. If you could get into the Regina Public Library, you could maybe borrow it at some point.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that book. And I'd never heard of that John Grenham book for the Irish source. I had never heard of that.
It's a website.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I hadn't heard of it before either. So, but I looked at it a bit, and it seemed to me like he has some interesting stuff. So give it a try.
And I have found a few Joseph Cunninghams just in different documents, but no way of knowing when I don't know any of his family's names or anything like that. And even on his attestation papers, he signs as Joe. So is it Joe? Is it Joseph? Is it Josephus? Yeah. You know.
Well, and even his father, you know, like he wasn't. It said, you said he said that on his marriage certificate, but maybe he wasn't prepared to give correct information.
Right.
He gave his own name as something similar.
Right. And the Montana, that family that I found, I guessed, I mean, the birth date wasn't correct or anything, but he was the youngest of 4 boys is all we knew. So that was one family that I found in Ireland that had 4 boys only, and he was the youngest of. So I did follow that
same family. Is the one I quoted the same family?
Yeah,
Because, yeah, there was exactly 4 boys
right.
and he was the youngest.
And I did follow those 3 brothers. They all died without marrying.
Oh,
Okay.
So
sad.
there's not much there.
That doesn't help you, does it?
No. And I do have the 1901 and the 1911 census, which there are Joseph Cunninghams. It's kind of like John Smith in Ireland, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, my daughter has had her DNA done and it matches numerous people. And I did ask somebody through Ancestry because his name appeared. This name is related with Cunninghams and Quinns. And this Quinn in Ancestry said, no, we're not related. But I will do my DNA at some point when COVID's done here.
Yeah, because your matches with your daughters will give a closer tie to somebody.
Right. And my uncle Norman Richard there, he had 3 sons.
Oh.
So I'm wondering if maybe his DNA, one of those sons would be stronger than the girls. Is there anything to that?
No,
I don't
not
know.
on.
Okay.
It just gives a different perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be a good way for you if you had yours and your cousins. Then that shows where it is that you're joining together.
Right.
And you'll be able to match people better.
Right. And the Deachman connection, I followed the Deachman family, and the Deachmans had 1 daughter, and she married a guy that their family had actually immigrated from the States. And so I was wondering if maybe Joseph was a friend to this Deachman daughter, because they were both listed as Teamsters.
There you go.
And they had a horse ranch, so.
Yeah.
I'm thinking there might be a connection with those Deachmans. Like, take a look back at the passenger list. I didn't have a lot of time to spend, but I was reviewing who he came with, like who they came on different boats, those boys. And they like look at their friends or who did they come on the ship with. And I was looking for Deachman, but I was in a hurry. So that's why I say, and Jean agrees, let's look at the Deachman family.
Okay.
The other thing is that when families came over, they stayed in touch with the families back in Ireland for a period of time, because then grandchildren and cousins and nephews went over. So even though the Deachmans were in the States, they maybe came from Ireland to the States and stayed in touch with the family back home. Now, I don't get too far caught up in the Deachman thing, but
Yeah.
I think it's worth a thought.
Keep your eyes open looking for it anyway.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, ladies.
Okay, now I think we have one more and it should be a pretty quick one, I think. And that is Joanne. And Joanne asked for tips and tricks for searching the Sask archives for land records. Well, I haven't done one for a long time, but what I made note of here is what I do if I'm going to look at something at the archives that's a homestead. I look up, before I go, I look up the name, the land location, and there will be a file number. So I do that online, and I gave you the web page and check with that'll tell you everyone they applied for. Sometimes people applied for 3 or 4 or 5 different quarters of land, and they didn't stay in one for some reason, like there was too many rocks, it was too wet, or there was various reasons that they switched or left. Take a look at where they went, how many applications they have, and then you look on the Library and Archives Canada site for what did they get granted? Did they get granted a patent? That's the one they ended up with. That's the one that was granted to them. But what's nice about looking in the homestead files in archives in Saskatchewan is you're going to see how many did they apply for. So go with that in mind and take note of file numbers. And that's really all I do. They've been in microfilm for years, and you can copy them or whatever when you're there. Is Joanne on here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Does that
Yeah.
tell you what to do?
Yeah, it does. Thanks. I'm in BC. So
Oh,
yeah, ultimately, I guess it'll wait till I can till I can get there.
Well, you might have a friend in SGS. that might be there.
And if you've got the time, familysearch.org has the Saskatchewan homesteads there. It takes a bit of time to find the right one,
Yeah.
but they are there.
Okay, thanks. And that was, yeah, that's sort of the root of it, isn't it? About
Yeah,
tips and tricks, whether it's just some arduous looking then essentially.
yeah.
Where do you live, Joanne?
Once you get the homestead number that
Yeah.
the file is numbered under, then
The
you
file, yeah.
search. Yeah.
Where do you
Okay.
live, Joanne?
In Coldstream, actually. So it's just outside of Vernon where you were.
Wouldn't that be
Posted.
lucky? I'm going out there this winter. Okay,
Fabulous.
well, I will send you an email though, Joanne, with that information on it. And
Sweet.
each of you that sent in a question, I'll email them to you.
That'd be fantastic.
Okay.
Thank
And I
you.
think that's it for us. Hey, Jean, do you have anything else?
I see there's a question from Thelma asking about newspapers.com and newspaperarchives.com. And I'm gonna answer that because I've used both of those websites or those databases. They're a pay site, and I've used them both because they have different papers in them. Some of the same papers, but they also have different papers. So you need to see. I use newspapers.com for my family around Birtle, Russell, Manitoba, because every single, well, not every single, but a large number of the local papers are in that one, but they're not in newspaper archives. So, you know, and newspaper archives has more BC stuff of what I've looked at, or a little bit more of Ontario. And so you'll have to, with all the newspaper websites, even the ones that are related to ancestry and so on, you'll need to check and see what newspapers they have as it matters to you in your search.
Yeah. That's why the sharing works so well.
Dianne, there's one more question that we had during your session. You were talking about newspapers at the time, and the question was, what was the website that you said? This is when you were breaking up. You said like Chronicle something? Jason is asking.
Chronicling America. It's in, if they have their handouts, it says https chroniclingamerica.loc.gov newspapers.
Okay, well, thank you. Then that's your
It's
answer
it's
for Jason.
very, it's a real fun, do it on a Sunday afternoon when it's raining. You'll stay all afternoon on it.
Okay, and that's all the questions that I see from the chat.
I see, oh, what did Brian have? I thought Brian just had one.
Yeah, Brian sent out a note in chat about that book that we were talking with Gwen. And although it shows Regina Public Library as the only source on SRI, apparently Brian donated a copy to our library. So there is a copy in the SGS library
Super.
available
Good to
for
know.
them.
Good to
So,
know.
So if
Sounds like she had it anyway, so, but I saw it. What I was trying to get at was search the SRI.
Yeah,
If you're an
that's-
SGS member, you've got access to it, so look.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dianne and Jean. That was a good session this morning. Lots of interesting stuff to digest and play around with and search for. So I think it will keep everybody busy. Couple of things I want to mention before we go this morning, and a couple of them are relative to some of the stuff that you said this morning. For SGS members, there is going to be a session on homestead records at the Provincial Archives. The Saskatoon branch is hosting a session on May 20th. They are only registering Saskatoon members at this time, but they are going to open it up to all SGS members. So something will be coming out to the members next week on that, and that's on the 20th of May. And then on the 29th of May, SGS is hosting a session with Pamela Guy Holland from the United States. She is doing a session for us on researching Irish records. And the Weyburn branch is sponsoring that session. And Marge and Eileen, if I got that one wrong this time, again, you can correct me because I can't seem to get it right. But that session's coming up on May 29th. So you'll get some registration information about that within the next week or so as well. And I thank you all for joining us this morning, and hopefully you all have the lovely weather that we're having here in Regina this morning, and you can get out and enjoy your weekends. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thanks, Deanna.
Everyone.